Female students, they all know exactly which side is the best side.
Average.
That's true. Like 5, 4, 3.
So you were telling me, Professor, that an ecosystem is the relationship between nature and humans.
Yes, especially in the modern way we think about ecosystems. You know, back in the day we tended to think that an ecosystem was something that occurred far away, maybe in the Kruger Park. That has an ecosystem. I live in Johannesburg, I'm not in an ecosystem. We now understand that's completely wrong. People are part of ecosystems, and in the modern world they're an incredibly important part of ecosystems. We're the big driver of many of these ecosystems, and if we study them without the people, we're kind of missing the point. And so not only are they the problem, they're also the solution.
And how does studying people and the nature and togetherness of our coexistence, how does it contribute to your work in terms of global warming and climate change? You've done so much extensive research.
So it really does come down to that solution space. So we can understand the planet in its before human state, you know, how it's exactly the right distance from the sun, and it's got this balance in the climate and whatnot, and that's fascinating. But we're now moving out of that space due to human actions, and we need to understand what those actions are, but most critically, we need to understand how to change those actions so that we're back in a livable space. And that requires not so much science as an understanding of humans. And that means that I spend a lot of time working not only with social scientists, political scientists, economists, all those things, but people like artists. Okay? Because people change their behavior not because I've given them an equation. Okay? They change their behavior because they move. And they're moved by art, by music. And I spend a lot of time, for instance, working with faith communities, okay, because it's way, you know, the way people think about their relationships to one another and to the world. And that's the province of people who understand theology and ethics and philosophy.
And then you find a better way to work with them. And if we have this understanding from that standpoint, that approach, then we actually, these solutions that there are plenty of minimal solutions people can actually incorporate within their homes and personally, and those are freely advertised and such. But honestly, I don't think people, and even myself, understand on a larger scale.
Well, firstly, you have to want to do it, and that's the kind of change inside. The second issue is that people get very despondent about how can my little action, you know, fix the world. Therefore, I'm not going to do anything. But of course, that's the only way to fix the world. It's the sum of millions and millions of individual people and individual decisions. It all starts there and it grows into this massive time.
To actually sum them up, there's a little movie about, I think it's Ant something, but a little cartoon animation movie. It literally explains that, when this one little ant stands up to this whole fleet of moths and says, because, and then the others stand up and then it's an uproar. And if we as society understood our power, actually makes me think of trees, numbers. Now I'd like us to move into deforestation, and particularly actually South Africa, because I wouldn't say that we are deforested, because I'm not understanding where we are actually in terms of forestry as a country.
So we need to understand that what we call forests in South Africa is not what the world considers to be forests. We think of forests as those things with tall trees, where the canopies are touching, and that's only less than 1% of South Africa, and it always has been. Okay, in the entire recorded history, that was tiny. No, we haven't done good things with that. We've now reduced that to 0.5%, but we did that last century already. If you think about the 19th century, everything that you currently build out of steel and concrete, we built out of wood. You know, we didn't have motor cars, we had ox wagons. Everything was built out of trees, and so we cut down those trees, and at some point we said, whoa, here's a huge problem. So now our forests in that sense are very strictly protected. We are no longer having any deforestation in
we
South
are
Africa.
preserving.
In fact, what we had to do was plant many times that area in exotic trees to supply those timber needs by society, and that's where our plantation forestry came from. But in the broader sense, about a third of the country is covered in mixed wood, mixed tree grass ecosystems. That's what we call savannas. And 3/4 of Africa is covered in savannas. They are the ecosystem of Africa. And that gets missed in the discussion because the forestry people say, oh no, those are forests. And the grassland people say, oh no, they're grassland. And they're neither. They're their own ecosystem. They have their own set of rules. And so, for instance, in the last few weeks we've heard an enormous amount of fuss about the fires in the Amazon.
Yes, everywhere actually.
And then someone, shifted the camera in space and said, but look, there's many more in Africa. Why aren't we banging on about the African fires? And they missed the point completely, because the fires in Africa were in savannas. They weren't in forests. Forests don't like fires. Savannas love fires. They have to have fires. And so what was happening in Africa was completely natural.
So nature was actually grooming and taking care, restoring and keeping the balance. Whereas in the Amazon in Australia and
that
such
was
places,
burning in forests which shouldn't burn. And so we have to understand those distinctions.
Thank you for that. My last question, dear sir, is that I've seen a lot online about vertical gardens, about adding a lot more plantation within cities to reduce air pollution. So is that possible for us? How can we go about it?
It certainly is possible. The way that plants in an urban environment improve air quality is because every growing green leaf has these holes in it called stomates. Remember that from school?
I don't remember the word, but I see a leaf and I see the holes.
Inside of the leaf is just like the inside of the holes. So when there's air pollution, it goes through those little holes and it gets taken up by the leaf. Now this is not good for the leaf. It kills the leaf. It kills it before it kills us. Okay, so that's the real advantage. We can also get a certain amount of nutrition out of that. I'm not going to say food, because we simply cannot grow enough food within the footprint of a city for that city to be self-sufficient. Okay, we're always going to have to get our bulk food from farmlands. But bulk food is not the same as nutrition. On a patch as small as the size of a desk, you can actually grow enough to get the vitamin supply and some of the critical protein supply for a family of four. And that's what we should be doing, and we should be doing much more of that in an urban situation. Not only because then we don't have to move things so far and we spare the land, but also because it reconnects us with our food.
Second time I'm hearing that reconnection with the food, reconnection with nature.
Yeah.
Sir, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for being one of those human beings who are not just following your passion because it's always something that you've been interested in, but also seeing the crisis and the issue therein and taking time to actually come and educate people. Tedx is a great platform to educate people. You reach people all over the world. Thank you so much.
It's not only my duty, it's my pleasure too.
And that is it actually. It's a duty of every citizen in the world to actually take care of our earth. It would be great if it was a pleasure for more people as well.
Good.
Thank you so much.